saw my friend Lori. Her daughter was in my very first youth group a long time ago. Now she's like married. That makes you old, but that also makes me old. I know, I'm feeling it now. So my name's Kristan, and I live in Westchester over other side, Liberty. So here's just a little bit about me. I was on staff at the Cincinnati Vineyard for a long time. I grew up and was on staff at a church in Milltown, medium-sized church. Jumped to a mega church for a while, and then I followed the Lord, and He led us to an old fire station that was, I promise you, called Hose House Number 4. It was in downtown Hamilton. I guess back in the day, they didn't really know that was not probably an appropriate name for a fire station, but we physically were located next to a brothel and a homeless shelter, so it was pertinent to the name. Like when we said that we were going to worship on Friday night at the Hose House, there was some truth to that. And I also got a lot of looks when I said that at Applebee's, like next to like a table of people who don't know what we're actually talking about. So it's kind of fun to say it loud when you get to make that statement, like what do people actually think I'm doing? A funny story that has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that the brothel that was next door to the Hose House actually let us plug into their electric for a while to do our worship on Friday nights, because the Hose House that we were part of literally had no electric and no water, and so we would plug into the brothel to do worship on Friday night. And there was one time where the guy that was doing whatever you do when you do that, he walks out on the phone, and I'm preparing myself to have a conversation, like, because we are worshiping loudly, and I'm thinking this might interrupt the brotheling. And so he walks out on the phone, and I'm like, he's about to yell at me, and I'm going to have to turn it down or whatever. And he is on the phone talking, walks down the steps, he looks at me, and then he walks to the corner to finish his conversation. And I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? That he would actually go somewhere else and not tell us to turn down our worship music while he's obviously taking care of his business. It was just the favor of the Lord that we had for that season of our lives. But what I learned in that season is a lot of what I want to talk about today, of just like what the actual church is. Because what I knew up until that place in my life was that I went to church, right? I ran a church. I created things, content, experiences, opportunity at a church. And then all of a sudden I'm in a street with no title. I didn't have a printer, right? Like there were no announcements, there was no Facebook page, there was no weekly email. It was not glamorous, but something inside of that place felt more like church than I had ever felt. I would never have been in a room with those people ever, in any other way, shape, or form. But yet in that room with people who I had nothing in common with, and my family looked nothing like, we felt more at home than we had ever been, and we learned more about the Father than we had ever learned. My kids were baptized in a tub in really cold fireman water in the Hose House next to a bunch of homeless men that got baptized. And it was nothing that I had ever pictured before, having grown up in the church, but it was exactly as it was supposed to be, and it shifted the posture of our hearts, and it shifted the paradigm under which we live our lives. And okay, I can now go and plant a church because, not because I know what I'm doing, but because I know who does know what he's doing. And because my posture is reflective of doing it in the way of Jesus. It is people before places. It's people before buildings. It is relationship before responsibility. God is ultimately and almost and always a father in pursuit of reestablishing sons and daughters to the family. And like his only number one goal in everything is to get people around the table. He is a father. On my best days, I want my kids around my table. Like now there's other days where I'll be like $20 if we'll stop talking. What makes this go away? Now, thankfully he is not reflective of me, I am reflective of him. So on my best days, there's always a seat at his table for me. And his number one objective is to get more people around that table. And so when we go into what the church was, I think we actually get a really good picture of that. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to run through, I know you've already read Acts 1 and 2. I'm just going to highlight what stood out to me, and then we will transition from that. Okay, this is what Acts 1 and 2 said to us, So therefore, this is the direction that we can know to go as we walk as the church here. So Acts 1 and 2, if you want to go there, you can. Like, I'm really just going to grab a couple of verses and give you a couple of things that I think are important. Acts 1:8, but you will receive power when Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, to the ends of the earth. This shows me that the church was people, that they were told to go and not to stay. Right? They were people who were told to go and not to stay. The church isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. You will do things at church and as a church, but church is not about what you do. I was never a pastor who worked at a church. Like, those are titles, right? Those are not descriptors of my identity. That's just a title that describes a job that I do. That's not my identity. That's not who I am. That's not what the church is to me, right? So church isn't about what you do. It's about who you are. You will do things at church, but that doesn't take over who you actually are, right? All right, while the early believers waited, they returned to Jerusalem in the upper room. As you read, that's what you got, you took note of. In Acts 1:14, it says this: all of these, on one accord, were devoting themselves to prayer together, the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and his brothers. Okay, this is interesting to me because it says all of these people on one accord, right? Okay, so if you look up the Greek word for one accord, it says, I'll spell it if you want to write it down, HOMOTHYMADON. So homothermadon is the Greek word for one accord. And here's what in the Blue Letter Bible, it gives this really cool description. This is used multiple times throughout the New Testament, and it's of two words. And the two words are rush along and in unison. Okay, and the image that it creates in the Blue Letter Bible, here's a quote that I pulled out. This is the image, okay? It's almost like a musical. A number of notes are sounded, which, while different, harmonize in pitch and tone. As the instruments of a great concert under the direction of a concert master, so the Holy Spirit blends together the lives of the members of Christ's church. Like, I love the words, rush along in unison. Like, the church, like, let's not tarry, right? There is work to be done. Let's rush along, but let's do it together. Let's do it in a way that harmonizes. Because here's what I think happened in that upper room. I don't think they all prayed alike. I don't think they all related the same way to Jesus. I mean, Jesus' mother was there, right? She definitely related to him differently than everybody else in the room. I don't think they all prayed alike because why? Because they didn't relate to him in the same way. They probably didn't all worship alike. They probably all had unique ways that they liked to connect to him in worship. But I think that it was harmony. And I think that it was beautiful. And I don't think they spent their time in their upper room looking at what they did that was different compared to what they did that was different. I don't think that they spent that time together comparing and contrasting. I think they just let it be. And I think it was harmony together to worship in that way. In Acts 1:15, Peter stands up and he begins to speak boldly. So this is as Peter goes into his first sermon. So this tells me that the church is full of people who are called to speak boldly. Now, some of those speeches, some of those talks are up here in front of people. A lot of those talks, though, a lot of the bold talks of the church are actually in what you do in your everyday life. My kids say, I'm sorry, and I say, show me that you're sorry. Like, your words don't mean anything to me if your life doesn't take on the posture that supports the paradigm that you sit under. And so we come together in these buildings and we say a lot of things. We say that we believe and that we trust God with all of our lives, but do we actually do that in the day in and day out? There's one of my favorite Hebrew words is called Shema, S-H-E-M-A-H, and it actually means to listen and obey. So to listen and obey, right? Now in English, those are two very different words, right? My kids listen, and then they sometimes obey, right? And in Hebrew, in the language of the Bible, when it says, "Hear, O Israel, that your Lord is your God," anytime it says listen, the majority of the time it's the Greek and Hebrew word, it's the Hebrew word Shema, which means listen and obey. What that tells me is that the Father knows that I've heard him, not by me reflectively sitting and writing down what he said. The Father knows that I have heard him when I actively respond with the life that I live. And so the church is full of people that didn't just hear something, right? Because just to hear wasn't actually a word in the language that they were hearing it in. They hadn't heard until they did. I can think of how many times I sit with people and they come to me like, I'm not hearing God. Like, he's not talking to me. I'm like, why not talking to you? What's the last thing that you feel like you've heard him say? Well, the last thing I heard him say was that, honestly, no lie, I needed to go buy a hammock. Like, well, that sounds like fun. Did you buy a hammock? No. I'm like, well, I went to Dick's and I looked at them. I'm like, okay, well, we got halfway through the door, right? Why don't you go buy a hammock? What do you think you're supposed to do with that hammock when you buy it? I think I'm supposed to spend time in it. I'm like, okay, I bet if you buy that hammock and you go lay in it, that you'll hear the Father. I mean, I just think maybe he's waiting. Like, here's the thing. I don't go outside and call for my dog, and when the dog doesn't listen, because it never does, I have like this little tiny dog thing. I didn't want, but I have kids and they're just obsessive. And so I don't go out because I'm the only one that takes the dog out, right? Because that's what I knew would happen, and that's exactly what's happened. And Zoe doesn't want to listen, and I don't change her name to Riley to see if maybe she'll pay attention to me. Right? But that's what we do with the Father all the time. We're like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, hammocks are cute and all. I'm like, way hip, and I just don't have any trees. Can you tell me something else? No, because he doesn't think we're listening. Like, we know, if you're a parent in this room, you know what it feels like to talk and not be heard. Right? What do? We either get louder and more demanding, or we just go to the other room. Right? And so we're expecting God to tell us something else, and he's sitting here like, why aren't you listening to what I've already told you? And so the church was a group of people who spoke boldly, not with their words, but with their actions. We say we trust God, show me. Say you believe him, prove it. Right? All right. Acts chapter 2. Here's my list. I'm not even going to point out any scriptures. Here's what I see at the day of Pentecost. The church was a group of people that were willing to be uncomfortable. The church was a group of people that were willing to not fully understand and stay very present. The church was a group of people who were willing to look foolish. The church was a group of people called to action. They were people who allowed their hearts to be cut by the teaching of the truth. They were people devoted to teaching, to fellowship, and to prayer. They were people who didn't get tripped up by their differences, but dedicated themselves to run forward together. They were people who participated in signs and wonders. They were people who took care of one another, and ultimately, they were people who multiplied. And here's what I see. It says at the very end of one of Jesus' notes, the Lord added to their number daily. The very end of Acts 2. The Lord added to their number daily, which shows me that multiplication did not come by what they did, but by how attractive their response made the gospel. So they didn't add to their number daily. The attractiveness of the gospel brought people in. It says in John 12, when I am lifted up, I will draw all people unto myself. Okay? When Jesus says this, when you lift me up, I will draw them unto me. It's actually not our job to do the drawing as the church. It's our job to do the lifting. If we will live attractive, gospel-led lives, Jesus will bring people to himself. Because when Christ in us compels us to go forward, Christ out of us does all of the attracting that we need. I spent a year and a half in a hose house with homeless people and prostitutes and drug addicts. We picked up needles. We had to chain lock our porta potty because people were shooting up in it all weekend long. Like literally, to go to the bathroom, you had to unlock the chain around the porta potty. And people came all the time. Like I would sit with people and tell them all the reasons why they should not come to the hose house. Like there's probably mice and lice and any other thing that is not nice. You had it. That's kind of what I did. It was totally accidental. I almost didn't say it, but you're welcome. I literally talked people out of coming. I talked people out of bringing. I couldn't. So you don't want to bring your kids. I've had to talk to my kids about all kinds of things because of the host house. Hey mom, what exactly, when you said this? One time I went to a student ministry conference and Ella was with me, and I said to the middle school kids, if you don't know what a prostitute is, like that's a good question to go home and ask your parents, and then say, you're welcome. And Ella gets in the plane on the way home, and she's like, so, I don't really know what that is. Shoot. Well, let me kind of explain that to you in this airplane with all kinds of people sitting around. Anyway, back to the place. Okay, here's what I want to do. So the church was all of these things, but what is the church today? Because that's what's important to us right now. We have to know our history because it helps us shape our future. But we also have to pay more attention to our present reality, right? Because Jesus is most real to us right where we really are. So the church then is different than the church now. But what does our present look like? Okay, so church today, in the United States anyway, church today looks a lot like a building, right? It looks a lot like a service. It's a place that we go. We take our kids to church on the weekend. We invite people to attend church services. Those are the things that we do today. A lot of times, we use church as an invitation to an experience, an opportunity to go hear someone talk about something. Right? Now, none of those things are wrong. In fact, I actually think that all of those, I actually planted a church, and I do the same thing. So, none of those things are wrong. I think those are creative ways that we have come up with to display the gospel, to make the gospel more well known. But, here's what I know to be true about the gospel. The gospel did not bring us a building or a service. The gospel brought us an invitation to a table. Right? The gospel did not bring us a clearly thought out presentation. The gospel brought us a family. Again, Alton is the other pastor that I work with at Anthem, and one thing that he says that is so high challenge to me, until I will do for your kids what I will do for my kids, then we haven't fully embraced the gospel of the church. Until I will love and sacrifice for your family in the same way that I will love and sacrifice for my direct family, I have not fully embraced the call and command and invitation of the gospel. That is what we see when we look at the New Testament. You come be a part of the family. We will take care of you. We will sell our possessions. We will be at your house when you need them. We will give up our own things. We will make sure all of your needs are taken care of. And until my individual family, grows to be more and more and more, the Lord adds to the number daily. Why? Because I'm living the gospel. My family should always be growing. Ultimately, my church should always be growing. Why? Not because of a production, not because of a service, not that any of those things are bad. Those are how we meet the people that we invite to our tables. Right? But my family grows when the people who are not blood around my table feel just as loved and accepted and cared for as the people that I actually birthed. Like, it doesn't matter that your kid is not my kid. I can still do for them what I would do for my own. And that's the invitation of the gospel. That's what Jesus shows us in the New Testament. It's this. Jesus' last mandate in Matthew 28 calls the disciples together. This is the last thing that he says to them. I'm going to give you all my authority and all of my power. Now I want you to take that and I want you to go and make disciples in all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Everywhere you go. The call of the church is this. Make disciples who make disciples, and ultimately you will get a church. Because what does a disciple do? So Dallas Willard says, a disciple is a person who spends time with Jesus to learn from Jesus how to be like Jesus. Okay? A disciple, actually, if you look up the definition, I don't even know right now, hold on a second. You look up the definition of discipleship, it says, a convinced follower of a school or individual. Okay? Now here's what this says to me. To the level at which I am convinced of Jesus directly affects the level at which I can convince you of Jesus. Right? So to the level at which I live my life surrendered to him directly represents the level at which I will be able to convince you to surrender your life to him. Guess what I can't do? If I've never trusted Jesus enough to quit my job, I can't convince you to trust Jesus enough to quit your job. Right? Because it's power of Christ in me is the power of Christ that comes out of me. And so discipleship is this. I have a call individually to spend time with Jesus, to learn from Jesus how to become like Jesus. And then my call is to invite others to come with me. Let me show you what I've learned. Here is Jesus. Here's what it looks like to spend time with him. Here's what it looks like to begin to live like him. Now go find your people. Bring them in and show them what you're learning. I read somewhere, I said, finding the gospel, leading other people to the gospel is just like being the mouse that found the cheese. You found the cheese. Now go find the rest of your people and convince them to come and experience what you have found. And so the level at which we will actually experience the gospel in our everyday life will directly reflect the level at which we're able to invite others to experience the gospel in our everyday life. Right? We can't convince someone of something that we're not fully sold out to in the first place. So the most responsibility falls on me and myself and paying attention to, am I becoming a disciple? My role in the church is to be a disciple. What happens naturally on the other side of being a disciple? Well, if I'm spending time with Jesus to learn from Jesus how to be like Jesus, on the other side of being a disciple of Jesus, I represent Jesus everywhere I go. Right? It's how Jesus was able to walk in perfect unity with the Father. He only did what he saw the Father do. He only said what he heard the Father say. Why was he able to do that? Discipleship. There was a direct connection. This is how we walk in step with the Spirit. This is how we pray without ceasing. This is John 15 when it says, abide in me and anything you ask for will be given unto you. Well, how do I get anything that I ask for? Abiding. When I'm attached to the vine, I'm in unison. I'm centered in relationship with Christ. Therefore, I can ask for whatever I want and it will be given unto me. Why? Because my wants are attached to his wants and we're in this place. And from this place I have what? All authority and all power to go and bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. Why would I even want to do that? Because I'm unified with him. Because I'm centered in him. And so I'm allowed to go. Guess what? He doesn't want to control what I want. He wants to give me what I want. He just wants me to be attached to the vine when I ask for it. Right? And sometimes I'm not. Like even Jesus is in the garden like, Lord, if there's any other way, take this cup. And what did he say? He said no. And what did Jesus say? Okay. Why? Because he's centered. I only ever do what I see the Father do. I only ever say what I hear the Father say. It was discipleship. It's discipleship. And so here's the call. The call of the church is to be a disciple because the mandate of the church is to make disciples. And you cannot make something that you are not. It just doesn't work that way. And here's what I wanted to do. So what does this mean for you directly as people? Well, as a pastor, the most important part of my job is to help my people recognize that is your mandate. Right? It's not just my mandate. I don't stand up here with some special anointing to go and be a disciple that you don't have access to. Right? Like, the disciples didn't know anything. And they literally started a movement that changed the entire world. Why? Because they were directly connected to Jesus. They were standing and walking in step with the Spirit. It has nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with connection. And so the mandate is just as much for you as it is for me. Now, it doesn't disqualify all of the work that I've done to help understand some of the things but what it does is it doesn't disqualify you if you haven't done that. The only thing that qualifies us is the gospel, which is grace, which allows us a seat at the table regardless of where we've been or what we've done. I'm qualified by grace and through grace and because of grace. And so the mandate to be a disciple, the invitation, all of our invitations look exactly the same. Right? It's like we all got the same wedding invitation. No one has a little squiggly mark on it. No one's name is written fancier than any. We all have the exact same invitation to show up to the exact same table. There's a seat for all of us. And so it is not my job as a pastor to make disciples. Right? I'm going to make disciples because it's my job as a person. But it is my job as a pastor to teach people that it is their job to be a disciple and to make a disciple. And as a church building at large group of individuals, our job is to create opportunity for people to be taught about discipleship. About what? Spending time with Jesus, to learn from Jesus, how to be like Jesus. Not to come hear a good talk. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time. And I hope that it's good, not bad. And I prepare for it and I work for it. But if that's the only thing that it consists of, then I have failed. Because guess what happens with the other 6 days? And the other however many long, lots of hours? They actually have an invitation to do this thing. So here, I just want to do, I'm a part of an organization called Gravity Leadership, and what we do is it's a para-church organization. We go into churches and we evaluate their ability to make disciples like Jesus. So I spend a lot of time working with churches in discipleship and having discipleship-driven conversations and evaluating what methods they're already doing and then suggesting the methods that we do. And we are centered out driven. So it is like a lot of times we'll go into churches and they want me to give them something to do. And they're either really excited or really disappointed when I tell them. I actually want to invite you someone to be. Because you're going to reproduce who you are. And so if you can become like Jesus, then you'll know what to do. Now, I can come in here with programs and ideas and plans, or I can just come in here with an invitation to the gospel. And as it transforms you, he will draw all men unto himself. And all of those things will come and fall into place as they should, from the center out. Sometimes in the American church, we go from the outside and then we try to get in. And it's not impossible, but it's hard. Right? You'll build the boat and then figure out how to make the engine fit. You build the engine and then you build the boat around it. Right? I think that's how we got on. Sounded good in the moment. If that's wrong, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Okay. I think they build a car engine first. That would make sense, right? Okay. Probably. That is not factual information. Okay, here you go. 3 things I want to share really quickly as we wrap up. Here's what you have to know for your individual discipleship. Number 1, God is always present and at work. We do not have to be people living to get God's attention. Okay? He is not like us. We are like him. Okay, so there are moments when my kids, Ella had a choir concert last night. She's an 8th grader. And I could see her looking to see if I was paying attention. You know how your kids do that? God is not like that. He was not distracted by my nieces who were like, when's Ella gonna sing? You're kicking the guy in the back. Sit down, eat some more crackers. He's not distracted, right? So he's always looking. He's always present. He's always aware. He's always available. We don't have to get his attention in the way that our kids try to get ours. He is single-minded when it comes to his children. We do not have to do things. We do not have to perform. We do not have to work. God is not attracted to us because of what we do. He's attracted to us because of who he is. Okay? My goodness does not lead to his kindness. His kindness leads to my goodness. He is kind, and that empowers me to be good. I am not good, which enables him to be kind. He is always present and he's always active. He is everywhere. This is discipleship. God is everywhere in everything, which means nothing is for nothing. Everything you do, there's an opportunity to encounter the always present, always available God. And he's a good father, which means his number 1 goal in everything that you do is to encounter you. It's not to use you. I don't use my kids. Okay, sometimes I do. But we already clarified that I am not perfect. My goal is not to use my kids. Right? Now I have a relationship with my kids, and a relationship demands responsibility. But I didn't have kids to use them, and sometimes we have this warped sense that God created us to use us. We even pray prayers, God, use me. I get it. I prayed it. But the reality is he's not a father who wants to use us. He's a father who wants to be with us. He wants to sit down at the table, and should he have to choose, Kristan, I can use you to talk to this room of 500 people, or I can sit and have dinner with you at Chick-fil-A tonight. I just think finally in my life he would choose Chick-fil-A. His objective is to be with me, not to just use me for here's the thing. He can get this message out on his own. He doesn't even need to use me. So his objective is never to just use me. It's always to be with me. Second thing is this. God actually likes me and wants to be with me, which is exactly what I just said. Here's the only way I can spend my life noticing and always present and always available God. If I actually think he likes me. Right? If I think that God shows up to the table with a list of things he wants to change about me, guess where I'm not going? To the table. And here's what happened. As I learned that he just actually wants to sit at the table and get to know me, as I learned to do that, as I learned to sit, it says in Revelations, I stand at the door and knock. If anybody would answer the door, I will come to the door. I will come in and I will sit with you. As I learned to just sit at the table with him, as I learned that he wasn't coming there with a whole list of things that I needed to stop, get together, figure out, or understand. He wasn't coming there with a list. As I learned to do that with him for myself, I learned to be that with my kids. My relationship with my children is at the best that it's ever been, only because my relationship with the Father has finally come into alignment. I understand, he doesn't come to the table to change me. He comes to the table to be with me. Now, being with him will ultimately change me. But that's not his objective. He doesn't come to me disappointed with my reality. He comes to me to be with me. Now, my reality will change because of his presence in my everyday life, which is actually the same thing that I have that opportunity in discipleship with other people. Like, I can sit around tables and be with people and not need to have a list of what I need them to change to look more like Jesus. I can just be with them where they are. And I can present. Let's spend time with Jesus. Let's spend time together with Jesus. Let's spend time together learning from Jesus. Let's practice becoming and living like Jesus together. And then the last thing is this. Here's a really good quote. A.W. Tozer. What comes to mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. Right? Because if God's always present and at work, but I think that he is this judgmental God, this disappointed God, this demanding God, then guess where I'm not going to want to be? In his presence. And so guess what I'm not going to notice? My invitation every single day. So the most important thing that I understand about God is that he is first and foremost a father above everything. He is a father, and he's a perfect one. He's perfect. And so the third thing is this, the final thing is this, God meets you in your reality. It's right where you really are. We come to the table right in our reality. The truth is that so many of us rarely shoot straight with God. The truth is so many of us rarely shoot straight with ourselves. We're unaware of what is happening on the inside. In Psalms 1 it talks about, Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way of the sinners, or take a seat in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. The starting line for your transformation is learning to name what's actually going on in your heart. Right? So it's reality. The Father is always about the inside, right? It's always about character over circumstances. My kids come to me with circumstances, and my job is to direct them to character. Because guess what? Guess what I can't really control? The circumstances. But guess what I am in charge of? The character development. So it's not behavior management, it's heart transformation. And the way that we transform our hearts is to partner with the Father in reality, what is actually happening in my heart. So I might say that I trust God, but I'm struggling to walk away from this job and to join him where I think he's inviting me, where I see him working. So what I have to pay attention to is what in my heart doesn't believe what I'm saying with my mouth. What is that rooted in? And so we dig deep and we find our realities. And here's what I've learned about the Father. He's not threatened by my ugly reality. Like, he actually created the system and is not even surprised by it. Right? Like, he knows we're imperfect and incapable of doing this on our own. That's why he sacrificed his son for us to have a way. So when I actually can't do it, like, he's not surprised by that. So faking something that he is not surprised by, it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, for me to fail, the whole system was created dependent upon one thing, my failure. And so if my reality isn't me learning to be okay with not getting this right and learning to bring my weakness to the table, then I'm going to only ever miss the opportunity to experience his strength in the middle of it. And so God is always present and at work. The God who is present and at work, he loves you, he adores you, he wants to be with you. And the God who loves you and adores you and wants to be you actually loves the you actually are right in this very moment. The you are in your hard marriage, the you are with your kids that you don't understand, the you are that doesn't like your in-laws, the you are that just flipped someone the bird when they ran a red light in front of you. I don't really know. He loves you right there. It's not in spite of that. It's not once you get that under control. It's not once you figure that out. It's not once you stop this. None of those things changes his love for you. His love for us changes all of those things. And that is what brings us to the table. And that's what we build our church on. Because guess what I want to be a part of? That. Guess what the whole world wants to be a part of? That. And guess why he adds to our number daily? Because it's easy. When those are the three things that I posture my life after, when that's the message that I share with the world, guess who's beating down my door? The world. I don't have to send a flyer. I don't have to make an announcement. I don't have to have a fancy program. There's nothing wrong with all of those things. They are just not the necessity. They're just the extra. They're the icing on the cake that I've already baked and it smells amazing. Let me pray for you. And then you're going to go into your groups. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the church. I thank you for the call and the invitation. I thank you that it is personal. I thank you that it is real. And I thank you that you are present right now in this room, Father, that you enjoy us, that you delight in us, that our seat at the table is not dependent upon anything that we've done, but everything that you are. Father, we love you. May we be people who spend time with you. May we be people who learn from you. May we be people who walk like you. And Father, may we find the people who we can multiply ourselves into. We love you and we need you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Wow.